Mr. Detrie was on the stand. If we can have him brought back in, and we'll continue with his direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. I wonder, when we get started, if I could have the court reporter read back to me the last question that I was on.
Absolutely. Is that enough? All right. Mr. Detrie, it's the afternoon session. I'm going to have Jody swear you in again.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Mr. Detrie, I believe the last area of questioning was that Nikki had left the watering hole with a group of your friends. And do you know about how long after Nikki left the watering hole did you or Greg start to receive some information that you should come down to the sardine can?
Don't exactly recall if she had said something about the sardine can in the short phone conversation we had, but probably received some text from her, I don't know, I'm guessing 15, 20 minutes after that point.
In your short phone conversation that you had with Nikki while you were still at the watering hole, was she at the sardine can at that time?
No, I remember her saying, I think they're in the parking lot in the car about to leave.
Was Nikki upset with you at that point in time?
No, she didn't seem to be.
Shortly thereafter, you indicated that you received some text messages?
Yes.
At some point, did Nikki send you a series of angry text messages?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall the content of those angry text messages?
I don't specifically recall exactly what they were. I know they were, I don't know, I don't really want to guess, but they're like, what girl am I talking to, or something on the lines of that, and some other comments that I didn't know where they were coming from. And
is it fair to say that some of those text messages were really rather upset or derogatory?
yes, they were.
This may not be pleasant, but if I read them to you, can you tell me whether or not that was a text message you believe she sent?
Yes.
Do you believe that at around 11:12 p.m. she sent you a text asking you, quote, "So what bitch you with"?
Yeah, that rings a bell, yes.
Do you recall her sending a text message that said, "Fuck you, abusive asshole"?
Yes.
Do you recall her sending a message that said, quote, "Wow, what slut are you with? Because none of your friends know"?
Yes, I do.
And another one that said, "I am not surprised. How many times have your dick been off for some whore"?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall responding to Nikki's text messages?
I believe I received those all like as a bunch grouped together that I had missed. I had not looked at the phone in a few minutes or however long it was, and saw them all, and I responded back something kind of nicely, just trying to diffuse and maybe calm her down, because she seemed upset from the content of her text.
Was your response to her an angry response?
No, it wasn't. I wasn't upset.
How did it make you feel when you heard those text messages?
I was kind of puzzled. I didn't know what she was thinking, or I didn't know what was going on, you know.
Did Nikki continue to send derogatory text messages to you?
Yeah, I believe she sent some more after that.
Do you recall getting a text message that said, quote, "Sure, you still love whores"?
Yes, something like that, yep.
And do you recall what your response was to that?
I think I did like an LOL or something like that back to her, and like, are you joking? Are you kidding? What's going on here? I didn't get it.
Do you recall her sending you a text saying, quote, "Yup, I learn lots"?
Yep.
And quote, "Why else you so fucking retarded"?
Yeah.
Do you recall responding to that text message?
I don't know what text I specifically responded to at what point, but I did respond back here and there when I did look at my phone and noticed that she was still, texting me, and I don't know at what point I tried calling her too, and
Do you recall if any of your responses to her text messages were angry responses?
no,
Do you recall using vulgar language with her in response?
no.
And why did you not respond in a vulgar or upset way?
Well, I wasn't upset, and I think I just kind of thought she was upset for an unknown reason, and that there wasn't really a reason for it.
And in fact, is it fair to say your responses were, you mentioned LOL or LOL, stop it, Nikki,
Yep.
and then just saying that you would be there soon or find her?
Yep, that I'd meet her at the sardine can or whatever. I'll be there soon.
Do you recall if the derogatory text messages then continued even after that?
I believe they did, yes.
And at any point in response to those messages, did you get upset with Nikki?
No, I didn't.
In fact, at one point she did send a text message that said, "You hurt me all the time."
Yes, she did.
Did you respond angrily to that?
No, I don't believe so.
In fact, at some point you responded asking her to call you.
Yep.
And it was apparent from the text message that Nikki was upset with you.
Yeah, and I was kind of just puzzled, and I was talking with friends and, enjoying the night, and I didn't know why she was texting me that way.
And where were you when you were receiving these text messages?
At the watering hole, I don't know where exactly at the watering hole, either between the bar or outside, and in between talking to various friends, and Greg, Katie, and ran into another group of friends that I hadn't seen in quite some time, and talked with them out by the front bar for, I don't know, I think it was 20, 30 minutes probably, and had some more drinks there, and had another round of shots or two, and
during this time, obviously Nikki's texts are accusatory. Who were you with when you were at the watering hole continuing to have drinks?
I was with Greg, and I believe Katie was still there for a while, and there were some other people that we had ran into. There was an Andrea and her husband, I believe, and I think maybe one or two of their friends that I didn't know, that they're just kind of hanging out by the bar, and another, a Steve that I had known from way back in high school.
At some point in time, you decide to leave the watering hole.
Yes.
Do you know how that came about that you left?
Well, it was, it was one of those things we were kind of like on the way out to leave, and that's when we ran into that group of friends, and then we got chit-chatting, and 5 minutes turned into 20, 30 minutes, and like, well, let's get going. And then I was getting those messages and looked at my phone, and it's like, we got to get going here. Let's go to the sardine can and meet up with everybody.
And when you say let's go, who was the other person that you were
With Greg.
Who was driving from the watering hole to the sardine can?
Greg was.
Is there a reason why Greg drove as opposed to you?
Well, I was pretty intoxicated, so I wasn't going to drive.
And where was your car at that time?
It was parked up in the back side parking lot of the watering hole.
When you left with Greg, did Greg come and pick you up?
I don't really recall if he. I remember walking outside for a little bit, and I don't know where his car was exactly, but he got into his car and left. So
Prior to leaving the watering hole, at any point in time while at the watering hole, did you use any substance other than alcohol?
at the watering hole, I believe during the show, I think I did take a puff off this pen type deal, a smoking device, or whatever.
And what do you believe was in that device?
I think it was marijuana in there, or a mix of marijuana and tobacco.
Any other substances at the watering hole?
No.
It's fair to say you were pretty intoxicated, though.
Yes, I was. I was drinking pretty heavily.
On the ride from the watering hole to the sardine can, did you have any contact with Nikki?
Yes, I tried calling her, and I think there was a time she didn't answer, and then she answered, and then she was like very ecstatic and wasn't making any sense. And I don't know, I talked to her for like 30 seconds, and like it wasn't, I don't know, she wasn't making any sense. So I handed the phone to Greg and said, "Here, talk to Nikki. She's not making any sense to me." And then Greg tried to talk to her for a few minutes, and I don't know, I don't recall what Greg was really saying. I think he asked, "Where are you?" And he said something about that she was walking somewhere, and he had asked, "Where are you? We'll pick you up and, go wherever." And
So Nikki was pretty upset and animated with you?
yeah, and it was just like her words weren't making any sense. She was just like kind of ecstatically yelling, and she was upset.
Did hearing that make you angry?
No, I was just trying to calm her down, and she just wasn't listening. I mean,
And then at some point you gave the phone to Greg,
yep.
and he didn't have any luck in calming her down either?
No. So we even pulled over for a while while he was on the phone a few blocks down off of Velp. It was a buddy of mine's old house, and we thought he actually still lived there. And we had pulled up by the driveway, and then somebody actually came out. I remember that somebody came out, and we're like, "Oh, that's not Josh's house." And we left, and that was somewhere right there is when Greg said she either hung up on him or her phone, just it died out.
After that phone contact, did you make any subsequent attempts to contact Nikki?
Yeah, I believe I tried to contact her numerous times.
Were you having any luck?
No, it would go right to voicemail.
Based on your experience, what did that mean if the call went right to voicemail?
Either the battery was dead or the phone was off.
Did you make several attempts to contact her by phone?
Yes, I did.
Did the two of you make any attempts to look for her?
Yeah, when we were driving down to the sardine can, I think we drove around the one block and didn't notice anybody, and went and parked behind, there's some bank or whatever parking lot behind the sardine can. We parked there and went in to the sardine can.
Were you concerned that Nikki was missing at that point in time?
I was not concerned that she was missing. I was kind of concerned, like, why is she upset? And I didn't get it, why she was upset with me.
Were you concerned that something horrible would happen to her?
No.
Why is that? Why were you not concerned that something awful was going to happen to her?
Well, I just was thinking that she was just drunk and upset, and that would, she'll calm down, get home and wake up, and it'll be a different day, a different thought process, and
So you knew she was upset, but you weren't worried that there was actually a safety risk?
no, I was just, just worried that, let's just talk and come to our senses here and work this out, and actually talk like adults and work it out.
Based on your experience with Nikki, can she usually take care of herself?
Yeah, at most points, yes.
Were you concerned that maybe she couldn't take care of herself that night based on her impairment?
I wasn't like specifically concerned that she was, I don't know, that she couldn't take care of herself. I mean, she's an adult, and I mean, she's from the area, and she knows where things are, and had needs to, she knew people, and could get a ride home or whatever.
Is it fair to say that's what you were expecting?
Yes.
You did then go to the sardine can?
Yes.
Did you make any further attempts to try to locate Nikki while at the sardine can?
I believe I tried calling and maybe sent her a text or two, and I know at some point in there I got a text that she had met somebody she knew, and she didn't say who it was, and I didn't know who it was either, and so I figured she had maybe went with a friend, whatever, and had gone someplace else, and that she just wasn't wanting to talk to me. She was upset. And
Then you and Greg stayed at the sardine can?
Yep.
What did you do at that point?
I continued to drink and had, I don't know, quite a few more shots and drinks, and
Did you make any attempts to talk to anyone at the sardine can about Nikki?
yeah, we asked a few people, and Greg had asked a few people around, just around outside and inside, and if they had seen Nikki or knew Nikki at all. And then at some point, Greg had said that somebody had seen her there earlier that night, and so that, you know, we knew that she was there, and they didn't know where she had went.
Do you recall being upset with Nikki that she had walked away?
No, I wasn't. I was just kind of, I was maybe a little upset that she was upset at me for no reason.
Can you describe your level of being upset?
I mean, just like, what's going on? You know, she's not thinking clearly, and well, she's not letting me explain. She's not listening to my texts, and just responding poorly back to me for kind of no reason.
Do you ever recall getting visibly angry with her?
I don't recall anything like that. No.
On that night, obviously. At some point, you decide that you're going to leave the sardine can and head home.
Yeah.
You know about what time that was?
I'm guessing it was around 2:00-ish or shortly thereafter, around 2 or so. I think we were leaving and we talked to a few people on the way out, maybe, from what I kind of recall.
Do you recall looking for Nikki at all after leaving the sardine can?
Yeah, I think we just drove around the block again. There was some people and a bunch of cars out there, and just, you know, to see if she was out there, and kind of had figured, you know, she was at the sardine can, she knew I was going there, that she'd maybe come back there, or, you know, she's with some friends and was wherever, you know, and having a good time somewhere else.
So again, concerned, but not really concerned about her safety.
Yeah, not her safety. I was, you know, just concerned, like, you know, why aren't you, why is your phone off, or?
Who's driving on the way home?
Greg was.
And again, your vehicle is back at the watering hole.
Yep.
On the way home, did you make any attempts to contact her?
I don't know if I maybe tried to call Nikki once on the way home, and it wouldn't, every time I tried contacting her, it kept on going to voicemail, so I was figuring it was off or the phone had died. I know she had been using Snapchat and a bunch of things throughout the concert, and the phone battery does go down pretty quickly then. So I kind of had figured that maybe it died, and that I was kind of wondering, like, why wouldn't she, like, try to find some means to charge it and contact me. But
did you make any attempts to contact any other friends who might know about her whereabouts?
yeah, I believe I tried contacting Crystal, I tried contacting Aaron. At some point I tried calling Dallas, the babysitter, via Facebook, because I did not have her cell phone number, and didn't have any luck, I think, the first time. And Crystal and I believe Aaron, somebody had told me that they're over at Keith's Bar over in Bellevue, which I was familiar with, and I think that was going back a little ways, I think probably in between 1 and 2 o'clock, that they said they were there, because I think part of the discussion was if we're going to go over there. And I had asked, I believe, Crystal if Nikki was there, and she said no, but Nikki wasn't with them anymore.
So in addition to trying to contact Nikki directly, you did make attempts to contact other people who might know where she is.
Yes,
And those were all unsuccessful.
correct.
Were you ultimately able to have contact with Dallas on the ride home?
I think so. I don't really recall. I know I tried to call her when we were in Greg's car, and I don't know if I left a message or I talked to her. I'm kind of unclear on that. I thought I talked to her and said that, having a conversation, that she didn't know where Nikki was or hadn't heard from her.
And You know about what time you got home that night?
Around 2:30, I would say.
And what happened when you got home?
Came in, I remember Dallas saying that Dylan was sleeping upstairs. I did go upstairs and checked on him and went downstairs. I don't know, and Greg and I were talking, and, you know, I'd asked Dallas if she had heard from Nikki or who she would be, where she would have gone, if she had any idea of, you know, who she would contact.
What was your mood with respect to Nikki at that point?
I was starting to get a little more concerned, you know, where she is, you know. I figured she'd be coming home that night, and, you know, I was kind of, you know, getting a little worried that she wasn't going to come home, but, you know, maybe she was pretty intoxicated and going to be staying somewhere else and was going to be, you know, to come home in the morning.
Who leaves first between Dallas and Greg?
I believe Greg did. I think they left pretty close to each other. I mean, within minutes, not too clear. But I do kind of remember, I think, talking to Dallas after Greg had left.
And do you remember what you were talking to Dallas about?
Not really. I remember asking, you know, at some point in there, it's not too long of a conversation, you know, where Nikki could have been, and, you know, she was sending me texts like this, and I don't know why she's upset. And
Did you actually show Dallas or tell Dallas about some of the text messages?
I don't know if I actually showed her the text. I may have, but I don't recall if I did or not.
Did you make her aware of them?
Yeah, yes.
And did Dallas have any information about Nikki's whereabouts at that time?
No, she did not.
Was there any discussion between you and Dallas about marijuana?
I think there was. I remember it being discussed if we would smoke and then was going to go to bed. And I don't know, I think it was brought out. And I don't know if I don't remember smoking, but I don't know.
Possible.
It's possible, yes.
Do you recall what your energy level was at that point in time?
Kind of drunk and tired. I had quite a bit to drink that night, and I was just kind of exhausted of, you know, not being able to get a hold of Nikki, kind of frustrated and tired, you know.
After Dallas left, what did you do?
I went upstairs, got ready for bed, took out my contacts, brushed my teeth as I do every night, and I think I went back downstairs, made an ice water. I don't know if I did that before taking my contacts out and brushing my teeth, but and then went to bed. And I remember laying in bed, and I called Dallas shortly after 3 o'clock and talked to her, and she said she had not heard from Nikki at that point yet, and that she was almost home.
What was your purpose in calling Dallas?
To see if she had heard from Nikki yet, because it was after bar time, and figured if Nikki was staying out till bar close or something, that she should be coming home at soon thereafter, you know, around that point.
What time did you fall asleep?
Right after I talked to Dallas, which is right around 3, a little after 3.
Do you recall when you woke up the next day?
I know it was probably between 6:30, I would guess, about.
What caused you to wake up?
Dylan was crying, and it was at a point where he had to eat every 3 to 4 hours. He was still breastfeeding, and I went downstairs and grabbed Nikki had pre-pumped a couple packets of breast milk, and I warmed that up, and I was hungover and kind of dazed, and went right back up to bed and grabbed him in bed with me and fed him the bottle, and we both went back to sleep for a few hours.
And do Did you make any attempts to contact Nikki at that point?
No, I don't believe so. I don't recall. That was,
When was the next time you wake up, if you remember?
I think, I don't know, a few hours later, 3-4 hours later, around 10:30, 11, I'm guessing.
That kind of when you started to get going for your day at that point?
Yeah.
Pretty late to sleep in by normal standards, but
Yeah.
how were you feeling that day?
Not good. I was pretty hungover, dehydrated, and
Did you make any attempts to contact Nikki at that point?
no, I don't believe so at that point. Because I woke up again. Dylan was, he woke me up again when he was laying in bed with me, and then I got him seated in his high chair and warmed him up some baby food, and because this was right when he had just turned 6 months and he was transitioning from the breast milk to some of the baby foods, and actually I think he was on his second week of that, and trying some new things and mixing bananas and all that stuff up in it. And I remember making myself some mac and cheese and eating that and feeding Dylan.
And at that point, were you concerned about Nikki?
Yeah, I was wondering where she was kind of at that point. It's getting a little later in the morning. I figured if she slept at a friend's house, she was, going to sleep in because she had been drinking a lot that night and probably felt the same as I did at that point, hungover and needed to sleep it off. And
Did you start to make attempts to locate her then shortly thereafter?
yes, I believe I sent some messages. I don't know if it was at that point or I know I had laid down with Dylan again because I still wasn't feeling that great at all. And I think I had sent some Facebook messages to Greg and Dallas and I believe her sister.
Why were you sending Facebook messages at that point?
Because I didn't have my phone with feeding the baby and everything, and I was right at the kitchen table. I remember going into my office, which was right off the kitchen and dinette, and would go send a quick message and then come back to Dylan in the high chair. And
Do you recall who you were contacting on Facebook?
I think I contacted Dallas, Greg, and then Heather,
And who's Heather?
Nicole's sister.
So at that point, you're getting concerned to the point where you're alerting her family?
Yeah, I was, starting to contact people where, have you heard from Nikki? Where is she?
And what other things are you doing shortly thereafter to attempt to locate Nikki?
I know I was looking for my phone a little bit. I remember going upstairs and looking through, because I remember the last time I was in the bed and looked through it quickly. I didn't see it on the floor, and then went back downstairs quickly with Dylan, and I had a headache and was a little queasy. I don't know. I didn't feel that great and needed to kind of lay down again. And Dylan was, a little tired and cranky. And
At some point, did you find your phone?
yes, I did.
And when was that, do you know?
We had taken a nap on the love seat. I remember laying there with Dylan on my shoulder, and I was watching the Brewer game and some other movie, and fell asleep there with Dylan on me, and then woke up after that point, and it was some point after 2 o'clock, I believe it was. I wasn't really looking at the time, but I think it was in the early afternoon. And I'm like, oh, here's my phone in my bed. I was just under the sheets.
By the time you then found your phone in your bed, you kind of up and about, getting going a little bit further?
Yep. And then I was really getting concerned at that point, and then I tried contacting Nikki and everybody that at that point, making calls and texts.
Again, who are you contacting then once you get your phone in order to try to get things rolling to find Nikki?
I contacted Greg, my parents, I contacted Dallas, and then we did, wondered if, I think Dallas had mentioned if she was in jail, checked the jail records, did an inmate search to see if she was possibly in jail, and then asked Heather to ask her mom if she could call the hospitals to see if she was at the hospital or anything like that. And I said something I wouldn't be able to call for HIPAA rights, and that her parents should. And called my parents and said, I don't have my car here, and I had told Greg to come over to give me a ride to my car, and said we gotta try and find Nikki here. And
Did you make attempts to contact Nikki directly as well during that point in time?
Yeah, I believe I sent her a text, and I think tried calling her, and her phone was still off and went directly to voicemail.
Do you remember, in addition to using a phone, did you try to contact her using any other forms of communication?
Yeah, I did send her a Snapchat with Dylan and I, and just to see if she would open that up. And I didn't know if she was like screening or blocked my number or what. I didn't know. And sent a Snapchat at some point in the afternoon, right when I got my phone there.
Was that a private snap message?
Yeah, right there.
Just visible to her?
Yep.
Okay. And that was you and Dylan?
Yep.
Again, an attempt to try to reach out to see if she would.
Yeah, I know it was something like Daddy and Dylan here at home, something on the order of that.
Do you know if you sent her a Facebook message at all?
I think I did. Yeah.
At some point in time, there's a decision made that you're going to contact law enforcement. Can you explain how that happened?
With talking with Heather, with her sister, she had said, I think in a Facebook message, I would just call the police right away, and okay, it's gotten to that point. I made that call.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't have contacted the police immediately?
Well, I was going to contact any of family members and to see if she was somewhere else safe, and just let cooling off a little bit, or because she was sending me some pretty upsetting texts, and I didn't know what she was thinking.
Again, that's your thought process, is that you're worried. Do you think she's mad at you and just not coming home?
Yes. Yeah.
Were you at all thinking that what ultimately did happen could happen?
Absolutely not. Yeah, that was not in my thought process.
Prior to contacting law enforcement, were you aware that someone's body had been found on Hoffman Road?
No, I was not.
You ultimately do contact law enforcement, and then what happens after law enforcement's called?
Well, I remember I was actually going to the bathroom, and I made that call and talked to them for like 10 minutes or 5-10 minutes, whatever it was, and did the missing persons report, and they said they would send an officer on the way, and my parents were on the way, and Greg was on his way over, and I took a shower quick, and as I was coming down, I believe Greg, and as I was getting ready, my parents and Greg, I think, had showed up, and I talked to them briefly, and got Dylan ready, or taking care of Dylan, and then as I was coming down, the officers had arrived at the house, and they came in, and we sat around the kitchen table and had a lengthy discussion about the night. And
so how many officers came to your house to take the missing persons report?
there was, I believe, just 2 inside the house.
Tracy Steffens and
Yep.
Mark Shield?
Yep.
And where did you meet with them?
At my dining room table.
And what did you do when they were asking questions?
I answered. I was, trying to recollect the night and go through the night a little bit and try to give them as much information as I could to see any contact information. I was looking through my phone and looking at the texts and kind of, refreshing myself what had happened and what she had texted that night.
And did you, in fact, share some of those text messages with
Yeah, I showed the officers right away,
Even the nasty text messages she sent?
Yeah, yes, I did. And I was a little reluctant to, but I was concerned at that point.
Trying to find her?
Yes.
What was your understanding of the purpose of their conversation with you when they came over?
Missing persons report.
And again, you were not aware during any point of that conversation, the first conversation with law enforcement, that a body had been found?
No.
Did officers share that information with you at that time?
No, they did not.
And you said Greg was there and your parents were present?
Correct.
Was Greg helping you fill in some of the details?
Yeah, because I was a little, I didn't know, I don't think I was that accurate on my times that I was saying to them, and then Greg would say, oh, no, it was more towards 11:30 or whatever it was, and kind of, talking with each other, what time, to get it more approximate times.
Fair to say Greg was more sober than you were that night?
Yeah. He was driving, so.
After the law enforcement comes to your house and takes a statement, then what happens?
Well, I think close to the end of the report, I signed a report, and then I signed over my phone right away to them. I think even in the middle of the report, or I don't know when it was, that they asked to look at my phone, and I signed that consent form over to them. And I think an officer, I don't know if it was the same officer or what it was, then took the phone and left. And I think some of the interview actually continued from there. And then when they left, at some point, Vicky and Steve, Nikki's parents, and Heather came over some point I think it was the early evening times, 'cause I think that it was probably 2 to 3 hours, I'm guessing, that I was with law enforcement at the house there.
So they were in your home for 2 to 3 hours?
Yeah, it was a long time. I mean.
And you continued to provide information as they requested?
Yep.
And then at some point, Nikki's parents and her sister are invited over to the house?
Yeah, and I know Heather had said she was working, and I don't know, like 8 o'clock rings a bell in my head that there was something that she came over around at that point after work.
Did your parents remain at the house while Steve and Vicky and Heather came over?
Yeah, they were there the whole time.
At some point in time, did you become aware that a body had been found?
We were all sitting around the kitchen table. Heather and I, we looked on the computer. We were trying to look up her phone records. I think we got into her Sprint account or Google account and looked at her tracking, and it showed right where, right by the sardine can was where like her last known coordinates was, and it was like a weird line that went directly to Wausau and then directly back or something like that, and it was thought that was pretty odd. And I told law enforcement about that, and then we were trying to look for her here, and all of a sudden, I think Heather got a message or a text or something on that order that there was a body found in Bellevue or something on that order. And
what did you do upon hearing that?
Everybody just started freaking out and oh my God, and I think my mom said, stay positive. I think that's Nikki, and wait to hear it, and everybody was crying, it's stressful, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a blur. And then shortly after that, I know somebody had said a medium or something, said she was okay or needed some time, and we thought that was a little odd that somebody said that too. I don't know if that was Heather or Nikki's mom, or I don't know. I just remember that being mentioned.
You remember at that point, did anyone try to find out any more information about the body that had been found?
We had the news on, and then I think it was a 9 or 10 o'clock news, and all of a sudden it said a woman's body was found in Bellevue, like Brule or something like that, and it was just, I don't know, it was, everybody's emotions were.
At that point, did you become more concerned that perhaps
Yeah,
this was
very,
Nikki?
very concerned at that point. It was, I didn't know what to think. I was trying to stay positive, but then I was like, it's, oh my God, that could be her, and it.
And then shortly thereafter, did you have further contact with law enforcement?
Yeah, we were all talking with each other, and they, I think 2 officers showed up again and asked if I would give them more information on the missing persons report, and I said yes, and they rode in their van down, I think it was with Steffens, and I think somebody else was riding in the back, and I was riding in the front, and we went to the sheriff's department.
How long were you at the sheriff's office?
Another couple hours, 3 hours at least, I'd say.
Did they tell you that you had to go down there, that you were under arrest?
No,
You went down there voluntarily?
I said it.
And did you again answer questions for a lengthy period of time?
I did.
And what time of night was this when you went down there?
I think it was close to midnight. I mean, it was getting late. And time was just flying by that night.
And officers had additional questions for you?
Yep.
You provided information?
Yep.
At some point in time, did officers provide you a little bit more detail that would suggest that the body found was Nikki's?
Yeah, after they asked some, characteristics of Nikki and everything, and they said, that there was some similarities or a lot of similarities, but they couldn't confirm that it was Nikki, that the body that they had found, and I don't know, it was something on that order, and I had a lot going through my mind at that point, and it was
How did that make you feel when you heard that?
devastated, shocked. I don't know. I was just a lot going through my mind. I was just so puzzled and shocked and hurt, sad. I mean, it's a whirlwind of emotions. And
At some point during that second interview with law enforcement that occurred at the sheriff's office, did officers ask you about your potential involvement in the case?
I think they did ask me if they had anything to do with it, and I did say no, I had nothing to do with it.
Did they ask you for some additional evidence to collect from you while you were at the sheriff's office?
Yes, they had asked if they could search my home, and I said, yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. And
And then how about clothing items?
yeah, they asked what I was wearing that night, and I had the same jeans on at that point, and I told them what shirt I was wearing, and the undershirt that I was wearing, and what shoes I was wearing, and then then they took my shoes and the jeans that I had on, because I was wearing the same jeans that night as I was the night before.
In fact, the shoes and the jeans that you were wearing at the sheriff's office then were the same ones you wore the previous night,
Correct, yes.
and you gave them to the police.
Yep.
And
And
gave
then
you different shoes and pants to wear home.
yeah, they actually, I don't know, it was weird that they gave me Greg's pair of pants and shoes. I was a little puzzled by that, and I was just kind of, I don't know, I didn't know what to think. It was just a very upsetting time.
Where did you go when you left the sheriff's office that morning? Would have been, 3, 4 in the morning?
Yeah, my parents picked me up at, I don't know, I think it was between 3, 4 in the morning, and we went home, and we were just crying, and because right when my dad was inside, like there was a side room of the sheriff's after I was out of the one room, and the one officer, the detective, or I think it was Kingston, said that the body he found did have a pink bracelet on from the concert, and that I lost it at that point. I just wanted to go and give my dad and mom hugs, and we just, I don't know, this was a wreck blur after that.
So at that point, based on the conversation you had had with officers and then learning that the body found had a pink bracelet, you were pretty sure this was Nikki?
Yeah, I was, because I was trying to hold out any hope that that wasn't Nikki at their, that they had found, and that like pretty much confirmed it to me, and that was.
When you left the sheriff's office, where did you go, Doug?
I believe we went straight to my parents' house.
Did you stop at the Berkeley residence between the sheriff's office?
No, we did not.
And where were you then most of the day on the 22nd?
Just in my parents' living room and at my parents' house, and I remember we stayed up probably, I think it was close to like 6 in the morning when I finally fell asleep, and I was sobbing and just very, very emotional, and everybody was, and just trying to get some answers. And I think I talked with I think Steve. I called Steve, Nikki's mom at that point, and talked with them briefly, and if they had heard, and it seemed like I think the officers were actually at their house at that point. I think that was like 4 or 5 in the morning, and I don't know, I remember anything of the details of that call really, but everybody was sad.
Do you recall law enforcement contacting you again on the 22nd of May?
The 22nd on that Sunday, yes.
Do you know if they attempted to get some evidence from you, some additional evidence, some DNA?
Yeah. I remember I was actually upstairs in the old bedroom at my parents' house and taking a nap with Dylan, and I remember talking, I think his name, officer's name was Mark possibly, and he asked for DNA swab or something on that order, and I said I'd talk it over with my parents, and I was then getting concerned, with them bringing me down to the sheriff's department. I'm like, oh my God, they think I did this, and
So at that point, you were concerned that they were looking at you as a potential suspect.
Yeah, yes.
So ultimately, did you voluntarily provide that DNA sample at that time?
I know there was, they said they were going to call back, and there was some delays in there. I went throughout the day that we called them back, and then he was calling me back,
And did you decide not to provide a sample at that time?
Yes, I decided not to at that time.
And did you have any advice from anyone prior to making that decision?
Yes, I did.
I don't want specifics, but what factored in the determination not to provide the sample?
Well, with talking with my parents and everything, and the possibility that they were, looking at me and asking for DNA and stuff like that, like we reached out to some attorneys to, get some advice just on, and they had recommended not to, for some legal process, whatever, not to give it just voluntarily, but make sure that there's a warrant for it.
And do you know ultimately was a warrant drafted and your DNA taken
Yes.
at a later date?
Yeah, and they did say that, it will be taken when they get a warrant, they will get a warrant for it, and they said just make sure it goes through that process or whatever for.
So your decision not to give the DNA was based in part on conversation you had with an attorney?
Yes, on their advice. Otherwise, I was leaning towards just giving it to them right away. And
did you return to the residence on Berkeley Road at any point on the 22nd?
On Sunday night at some point, I know it was dark, my dad brought me over there, and so I only had Greg's shoes and pair of pants on and the shirt I was wearing from that night before, and I grabbed a change of clothes and a couple dress shirts and stuff like that, and shorts, and my contact stuff and overnight bag with all my stuff that I need.
And your dad was with you?
And my dad was with me. Yeah, he was the one, he drove over there. And before that, we had actually gone over to the watering hole we were going to get my car, and it wasn't there. I think that was Sunday at around dusk.
You did not have access to your car at any point on the 22nd?
No, I did not.
Your dad drove you over to Berkeley to get some clothes. How long were you there, if you can remember?
I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or something like that. And,
After you left Berkeley, where did you go?
right back to my parents' house. I believe I showered, and it was just a wreck. And I don't know how much I slept that night, and it was very, very tough time that I don't like to try to recall. And
Did you remain at your parents' house then the next day, the 23rd, which was I believe a Monday?
on Monday, actually, that one attorney that we had just got some phone advice from, I had a brief meeting with them. I went to the office.
Your office?
Yeah, my parents' office. And we went out, I think we went out to get some breakfast, and I remember I was crying, and there was a bunch of people out, it's a place we went routinely for breakfast and lunch, and I just didn't want to be there. And it was probably there for a while. I did eat, and we went back to the office for a little while, and then I went back to my parents' house.
Did you return to the Berkeley residence at all on the 23rd?
No, I did not.
I know this is probably not easy, Doug, but at some point then on the 23rd, did the police return and have contact with you?
Yes, and I had contacted, or Greg had called me, I think at some point, and I was in contact with Nikki's family. Don't know exactly what times during the day, but I think at some point in the afternoon on Monday, Greg was saying, they're talking to me and they're like thinking it's you and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God. And I talked to Aaron. Actually, Stephens called me. This is probably, I don't know, 5 o'clock or something time frame, and asked where I was, and I said, I was at my parents' house, and said that they needed to ask me a few more questions. And I was like, oh my God. And I talked to Aaron, I believe, and he's, I had a real short.
Kolinsky?
Yes, Aaron Kolinsky. And he said, stay strong, buddy, or something like that. And then the cops came and they arrested me.
And I'm not going to ask you about your conversations, but what were you thinking? What was going through your head when you were arrested?
Just like, I don't know. I was like, why? How am I in this position? What's going on? I didn't get it. I think I said to him that this is wrong. I was told I was advised not to say anything, and I wanted to say so many things. I had nothing to do with this. You guys are making a big mistake here, and
they informed you that you were under arrest and that it was for what they believe was the murder of Nikki Vanderheiden.
yes.
Doug, when was the last time that you personally saw Nikki alive?
It was, I think it was right after the show. I don't even really recall. I think it was right when we were going to the bathroom, and said I was going to the bathroom, and just a little, hey, going to the bathroom and see you in 10 minutes, whatever, And that's the last time I saw her.
Doug, do you recall if prior to your arrest, if you had a Fitbit device that you owned?
Yes.
When did you get that?
I got it as a Easter gift, actually, from my parents, and think Easter was in late March, early April, and started wearing it a couple weeks after that.
What was the purpose or the primary use of that Fitbit device from your perspective?
Try to get back in shape and get moving, because over the long winter, and Nikki was always very fitness orientated, health orientated, you know, exercise, and we both were, I just get a jump start, and that was just something to, maybe a little additional motivation to track my activity levels.
When you started using the device, did you open it up and read the instructions in terms of how you should use it and set it up?
Yep.
Do you recall specifically how that process works?
I remember I think they told me to put it on my left wrist, and you put a setting on it to say that. Then you enter in your height, your weight, and I think your stride length or something on that order.
When you say you enter it, where do you enter it into?
It was on the phone, I believe on the app.
At that time, did you have a smartphone?
Yes.
You're familiar with how to download apps and how to use them?
Yeah, I had numerous apps at that point.
The Fitbit device that you had, did you find it to be relatively user-friendly?
Yeah, it was pretty easy to use. I mean, it was a 30-second, a minute setup, you know, entering the information. And
did you use the device regularly?
yes.
Kept it on all the time?
I kept it on all the time. It was even a device that you were able to shower with, and it just became like second nature that it was on my wrist and didn't even notice it was there. It would send me notifications on my phone saying, you know, you're short of your goal here, or you've met this activity goal, and also it would send, if I would, times I did take it off, or it would say when the battery was low, and then you charge your battery, and it would be a little plug-in device that was in a USB. You plug in, you take the little piece out and put it into this little charger, which is hooked up on the computer, and an hour or two that would charge and put it back in.
Was that the only time that you would take the device off, is to
Yeah.
charge it?
Yep.
Do you know, were you wearing that device on May 20th into May the 21st?
Yes, I was.
Were you wearing it when you were at the watering hole that night?
Yes, I was.
Did you wear it to bed that night?
Yes, I did.
Were you wearing it in the morning the next day?
Yes.
Were you wearing it when you were talking to law enforcement on the afternoon of the 21st and also in the early morning hours of the 22nd?
Yeah, I wore it all the way up until I think they maybe take it off when I was getting arrested or booked into the jail.
During the time period that you owned that device, did you check that app relatively regularly?
Yeah, pretty much on a daily basis, 1 or 2 times a day at least. And
Did you, were you able to make any determination about how accurate it was with respect to the step counting?
yeah, I had kind of tested it out. I remember walking around my kitchen table in Island and watching it on my phone. The steps would go up as I would go around, and well, doing little laps around the table.
Did you do any scientific studies in terms of how accurate it is?
No, I didn't do anything like that. Just
Regular use and
yeah, it just seemed to be accurate.
Doug, do you recall, you said your pants and your shoes that you were wearing out that night, you provided those to law enforcement?
Yes.
What other clothing do you recall you were wearing out to the watering hole that night?
I know I had a button-up green with striped shirt, and I had a black T-shirt. It was a T-shirt I had had for many years, and I had always worn that. It was a black T-shirt, concert T-shirt. And I had said Razor 94.7 on it, and I had had it probably for at least, since probably high school when I'd gone to my first concerts.
Did you tell law enforcement about the shirts that you were wearing that night?
Yes, I did.
Tell them where they could find them?
Yep, and they had asked, and I told them they'd be, I thought they were right by my clothes hamper for the dirty clothes. I put them in.
You recall what you wore to bed that night?
I think it was just, I wore a T-shirt and boxers to bed that night.
You know which T-shirt you wore to bed?
I wore that same T-shirt.
That Razor 94?
Yes,
T-shirt?
the black T-shirt, yep.
In fact, were you still wearing it the next day?
Yep.
How do you know that now?
Well, I know that, I remember when I sent that Snapchat to Nikki, that I was wearing that T-shirt.
Snapchat where you're holding Dylan?
Yeah, so I was holding Dylan, I believe we were on the ground, and just, did a little selfie with Dylan and myself and sent it over to her. I remember taking that off after I had called the missing persons report in, and took a quick shower and then changed into some different clothes at that point.
Prior to your arrest, did you own a pair of Air Jordan shoes?
I believe I had an old pair. It was actually a pair of my brother's shoes that he had given to me that were just an old around the house pair of shoes.
What did you use them for?
I use them, I put them on when I would mow the grass on the riding lawnmower. If I usually kept them in the garage, if I went out in the garage to go grab something, whatever, just they're slip-on shoes and in poor condition.
At that time, did you have quite a few pair of shoes?
Yes, I did. There weren't shoes that I would wear out or anything like that because they were old. I would, heavily worn.
Doug, did you have absolutely any involvement in Nikki's disappearance or death?
No, I did not.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Let's begin our cross-examination now. Go ahead. Well, I think we'll move it up a little bit. Why don't we take our 15-minute afternoon break now, and then we'll resume with cross-examination.
All rise. Testified earlier about your relationship with Nikki in 2016, correct?
Yes, I did.
When did you meet Nikki?
In January of 2015.
And when did Nikki become pregnant with Dylan?
I was aware of it. She told me around, I think it was like mid-March, late March of 2015.
So that was pretty quick into the relationship?
It was, yeah, pretty quick.
Can you describe your relationship with Nikki?
We pretty much, from the day we met, the night we met, we were pretty much inseparable, and we did many things together, and it was going very well.
And Nikki stayed in a lot?
Yes. I guess when are you referring to?
In 2016.
In 2016, let's see that. Well, after Dylan was born, we pretty much stayed at home with a newborn, and she had to breastfeed every couple hours, and so she didn't go far. We did go out for some family dinners and a few dinners here and there, and shopping, bringing the kids to school, but not going out and to the bars or anything like that, just besides on a few occasions.
And you said that early on you were talking with her about marriage?
Yes.
And you had pictured that Dylan would be walking up that aisle with you?
Yes, that was both of our parts of our conversation.
Was that still the case in May of 2016?
I don't know how recent, I mean, in that near time frame that we had, went over that conversation. It's sometime after Dylan was born and a few months old at least.
In May of 2016, were you closer to breaking up with Nikki or closer to marrying Nikki?
I would say, I mean, in between there was, we had some arguments about a few minor things, but we'd always, sit down and discuss them, and then, think how we could move forward from that, and just continue to better ourselves in our relationship.
So in May of 2016, when you said that when your house sells, you and Nikki were going to go on your separate ways, don't worry about it, it is what it is, when you said that to your mother, is that an accurate statement?
I don't specifically recall what you're talking about. Was that?
In a conversation with your mom, Diane Detrie?
I don't recall that that conversation.
How about when you told her, I'm very seriously thinking about telling Nikki and the kids they have to move. I'm not cut out for this life one bit. Do you remember that?
I remember, I think I sent something on the lines of that, and I was having a, little downer day or whatever, and I just said that to my mom with not truly meaning it, I guess.
Did you often say things you didn't mean to your mom?
I mean, yeah, sometimes I would, yeah. I mean, it is my mom. I'm very close to her, and
So since you're close to your mom, that means you lie to your mom?
no, I don't say I would lie. I mean, maybe sometimes, but
What about this? Was this a lie?
I don't know if that was. I just really don't recall a circumstance when I said that. I know it's maybe because I was trying to. Hadn't been with my parents that with work. I had taken a long time off with Dylan being born, and hadn't worked, and was trying to get back into work and get into a normal routine again. And I was maybe just a little crabby or irritated that day, and just said something on the order of that, I guess.
So in May of 2016, though, there were times where you were seriously considering breaking up with Nikki and the kids.
I never really seriously thought about it, like made plans or anything like that. It was just a kind of an upset. I sent the text out or something like that.
It was just a lie to your mom.
I would say, I guess you could, because I didn't have any intentions to go through with that. I mean, I was undecided at, we had discussions, I think, after we might have had an argument, and that's, when I was feeling a little down at that point and sent that message, and then Nikki and I later talked about it and reconciled our differences and move forward.
So when you would have those types of arguments, would you typically make that jump to then breaking up with Nikki? Was that common?
No, it wasn't common. I think maybe if that was like the one time or a couple times, or if it was in the same day, or I don't really recall.
What were you arguing about?
I don't recall. I don't think it was.
Did you argue often?
No, not that often at all.
But you can't remember such few times today?
I'm sorry,
You can't remember that argument at all?
I don't remember that specific argument. There was a couple arguments that were just over some minor things, and I know she would complain or be upset with me for I would go out, and if I was going out with my friends and she was staying at home, and I think maybe she was she wanted to maybe join and she couldn't, and she was home, and I don't know what was going through her mind.
So you said that you would define it as a minor thing?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I wasn't,
So it was a minor thing, but then your ultimate conclusion was that you were gonna break up with Nikki and have the kids move out of the house.
no, that wasn't my conclusion. I mean, was this maybe an off-the-cuff comment? I don't know.
Do you typically overreact like that?
No,
Just that time with your mom?
I don't know. I don't know if it was just that time. I mean, what are you referring to?
Any other times?
Any other times ever, or any other times in May?
May of 2016.
I really don't, I mean, it was all kind I don't know, that's a long time ago, I don't really know.
You
I mean-
testified to a lot of things today that happened in May of 2016.
Yeah, to a specific night that, you know, I've had replaying in my mind for a long time now, and
Where were you working in May of 2016?
I wasn't working too much. I was still working, I was working a little bit from home and working not as much as I should at our office at Detrie Builders.
You talked earlier with the state, you testified about some of the licenses that you have. What were those again?
I have my certified building contractor's license in Florida, and also my, it's a dwelling contractor license in Wisconsin.
Did you have that Wisconsin license in May of 2016?
Yes, I did. I believe I had it for 4 years at that point.
You were interviewed by law enforcement on May 20th, correct? Or May 21st, I mean?
Yes.
And at that point, you told them that you weren't working at that point in time, and you kind of joked with them that you didn't really like working with family at times, right?
Well, yeah, it said, you know, it's tough working with family, you know, we see each other often, and got a lot of family. My grandfather, my father, my brother, we're all in the same office, and small office, and, you know, it's family. And
When was the last time you had worked?
I don't recall last time. I know I was into the office on that Friday, which would be the 20th. I was in there for an hour or so. I know I worked on some emails and sent out some replies, whatever.
How many hours a week do you think you were working?
At that point, not many. I don't really recall. I know I was just having some talks with my parents and actually with Nikki, and on both our ends that we were going to get back to work here, and you know, we had taken some months off with, you know, Dylan being a newborn and everything, and it was time to, you know, get back. It was over the winter, and springtime is our busy time in summer, and get back to work. And we had goals that, get back and save some money and support the family.
So at that point, you and Nikki hadn't been working for a few months.
Well, Nikki had worked a few nights, and she had just started back at Ogun. I think she had waitress, bartended several nights. Don't recall what nights they were, but they're somewhat recent in that May, maybe late April timeframe, where she was she took a few substitute jobs, and I think she bartended maybe 2 or 3 nights or something like that.
How were you able to pay all of your bills?
Well, I had some money saved up, and I did, my parents did help me out some with some bills, because I did take some time off before Dylan was born, and I was home caring for Nikki. And at any point, I think she was like 3.5 centimeters dilated for a long period of time. And I had gone to all the doctor's appointments, and, you know, they basically were saying it could be any time, and I wanted to be at home, and anything that she needed, and be ready to, oh, the baby's coming and we got to get to the hospital. So,
Did your parents help you out financially quite a bit?
yes, they did.
Were financials a stress in your life?
Yeah, they were. I mean, the stress, I mean, I was, wasn't feeling great about myself that, I wasn't, it's kind of hard to ask your parents to loan any money, and, it's,
What do you mean you weren't feeling great about yourself?
well, I just felt, not being in, not going to work and taking that much time off for a good reason, and they understood that as well. But it was, it was 5-6 months after he was born, and it was time, to get back. And I had worked, some days here and there, and I was doing some work from home as well. And it was, when I'd work at home, it'd be like an hour here, and then, caring for Dylan and helping Nikki out, and then an hour or two, it was kind of like pieceworking back in. It wasn't in, I wasn't in at a set time and done at a set time ever.
Which room did Dylan sleep in then at the Berkeley residence?
Dylan slept in our room, the master bedroom.
Who typically fed Dylan?
Well, he was breastfeeding, so up until I think it was about a week or so prior to her passing, that was this one at a 6-month doctor's appointment. It was when the doctor said to start transitioning to some solid foods and some baby foods. And I forget, it was still like 6 breastfeedings and every 3 to 4 hours, and then to work in and see how he tolerated some of the purified foods and all that.
And earlier, and we've heard throughout a lot of this process, Nikki was a great mother.
Yes, she was.
Nikki fed Dylan, right? She changed Dylan. She played with Dylan. She bathed Dylan. She cared for Dylan.
Yes, she did.
How much of that did you do for Dylan?
I did a lot of that as well. I mean, obviously I couldn't breastfeed him, but I changed, I would say, half the diapers, at least. I mean, I had no problem changing the diapers. I remember changing his first poopy diaper in the hospital. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It was great. And when Nikki would be feeding, I'd be either playing games. If it was a weeknight, I'd be playing with Tyler and Michaela, and Tyler liked watching Walker, Texas Ranger. We'd watch that every night during the week and after dinner, because I'd come home from work. Because I was working for, a period of time there. I think it was maybe March, April, when I did start, making some days of work, and I'd come home and Nikki would have dinner already, and we'd sit down and have a dinner together as a family, and we'd, watch some TV and get ready for bed and play some games, whatever,
You talked about Dylan at the hospital. Do you remember how long he was when he was born?
He was 21 inches,
How much did he weigh?
7 pounds.
After May 21st, you told law enforcement really you were terrified of having to take care of Dylan and that you were going to need help with that.
I believe I said I was like, I was scared. I thought, and it was kind of scary. I mean, Nikki did do a lot for Dylan. I mean, she was his mother, and breastfeeding, that whole, it was something new to me. I didn't, I was learning in that 6 months of having my first child. It was a learning process, and getting accustomed to that, and there was I was seeing all the good and everything that the joys of having a baby.
And you were been defined as the irresponsible friend. Does that come into it as well? The irresponsible friend.
Irresponsible friend? I don't know what you're referring to.
Why would Greg refer to you as the irresponsible one of the group?
I don't know.
You said that Detrie Homes, it's a family business?
Yes.
And are your parents in charge of that right now?
Yes, my father is the president.
And then you work for him right now?
Yes, I'm actually a subcontractor. I have my own corporation.
And then are you going to take over that business?
Potentially someday. My brother works in the business as well, and he does a very good job. And I know I think that's part of his plans as well.
So I want to talk about just your general knowledge of the area. How long did you live at 2329 Berkeley Road?
We built that house in 2010, and I believe I moved in July of 2010.
Was that a house that Detrie Home Builders built?
Yes.
Where did you live before then?
I lived in an apartment over, forget, it was on PP and over by Manhattan Lanes in East De Pere, over near the Fox River on the east side.
I don't know De Pere at all. Can you just do you remember the address?
Pershing Road. It was, I don't remember the exact apartment street address. I think it was apartment 82 or something like that. I don't know.
Where do your parents live?
They lived on Euro Lane.
Do you remember their address?
Yes.
What is that?
3527.
And how long have they lived there?
Now it's probably been close to, I think it was early 2000, like 2002, 2003 or somewhere in that time frame that they built that house.
Do you remember where they lived before that?
Yes.
Where's that?
2600 Appian Way
And what city is that in?
in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Where does your brother currently live?
He lives on Copper Lane in Ledgeview.
Is that all within that general area?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you know that area well?
Yes.
And I think you mentioned, or somebody mentioned earlier, that your family dined often at a place called Ziggy's Inn.
Yeah, we'd go there for some, basically when it was family birthdays. That was kind of like the birthday place. If it was my birthday, my brother's, my dad's, grandfather's, we'd go there for birthday events.
And again, that's right in that general location.
Yes.
And then did you bike the East River Trail ever?
I did a few times with Nikki and Tyler and Michaela.
Did you ever go on the East River Trail besides when you biked?
Not any time recent. There was, I don't know, up to from my house, we went to the park. We would walk to the park, which is right at the start of the East River Trail, right by the creamery and the Blue Restaurant.
Are there any other places you went to often in that area?
Would go to the Greystone Ale House and several other, I think it was called 21 Gun Saloon, which was up the hill past the golf course. Would go golfing at the golf course, which used to be Mystery Hills, and it's now Ledgeview Golf Course. Would go to Mr. Golf on GV.
So again,
went to,
you know that area pretty well.
yes.
Where exactly is Ziggy's Inn?
Ziggy's is at Hoffman Road and I think East River Drive at the intersection.
So that's pretty close to where Nikki's body was found, isn't it?
I guess that would be about a half mile or a mile away.
Do you know how far of a walk that would be?
I don't know, half mile or mile I'd approximate.
That question, how far of a walk from the place where your body is found to Ziggy's?
Yes.
So the record reflects what he testified to. Mr. Detrie, the half a mile is between Ziggy's and where Nicky's body was found. Is that what you were testifying to?
Yes.
All right. This one, the record's clear. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Judge. Doug, do you hunt?
Yes, I do.
And what do you hunt?
Usually just deer. I've done some small game hunting.
What about turkeys?
I turkey hunt as well. That was actually second or third time I'd been turkey hunting earlier. I think the week or two prior in May, I had gone out and was successful of harvesting a turkey at that point.
And what do you hunt turkeys with?
A shotgun,
What would you hunt deer with?
a rifle,
And what would you hunt the small game with?
a shotgun, or my .22 rifle that I no longer have.
So like a lot of people in Wisconsin, you also have a concealed carry permit, correct?
Correct.
That's also known as a CCW?
Yes.
You didn't own any sawed-off shotguns to conceal, right?
No.
You didn't own any sawed-off rifles to conceal?
No.
Doug, the Steel Panther concert, that was not a planned event, right?
No.
It was a last-minute decision by you and Nikki to go?
Yeah, I think I don't know how it was brought up, but I don't know, I talked to Greg or Aaron and said they, were going to that. And months prior to that, we were grilling out at, I think it was Aaron and Darcy's duplex, and they had brought up Steel Panther to Nikki, and she was unfamiliar with it. I was unfamiliar with them, and I remember her saying at that point that she had wanted to go, and we hadn't talked about it. And then all of a sudden it was that night, and somebody contacted me and said, "You guys want to go?" And I brought it up to Nikki, and she said, "Yep." And so let's go.
And you and Nikki didn't go out often, right?
No, we didn't.
So this was a pretty happy occasion?
Yes.
When's the last time you were able to go on a date with Nikki?
Like just Nikki and I ourselves.
Sure.
I don't recall the last time it was just us two. I know that earlier that week, I think it was Monday night, her brother Brent had graduated, and we went out and met with their family and had Red Lobster and had dinner together with Tyler, Michaela, Dylan, and the rest of their family.
Did you fight before the watering hole?
No, we did not.
And you drove to the watering hole?
Yes.
How did you pay for things at the watering hole?
I think mostly with cash.
How did Nikki pay for things at the watering hole?
I think I had bought most of it. I think she said she was going to buy the tickets because I wasn't, wasn't overly excited to go. I didn't know much about Steel Panther. I'm like, well, I guess we'll have a good time, and some of my friends are going. Let's go. And she said that she was going to buy the tickets, and then actually when we were standing in line, Nikki had asked, had said something about, is this the line for the tickets? And then a lady in front of us said, hey, I have 2 extra tickets, and gave us 2 free tickets. So it worked out that way, so we didn't have to pay for tickets to go into the event.
What did you do once you got to the concert?
Like once we got in the first doors,
Right.
we went in, I think it was in the back part of the building, and then there was the side middle room. You had to get a wristband, and we waited in line there and showed our IDs. And I don't think Nikki actually, for some reason there's something I remember, she didn't have her ID or something, or it was an expired ID. But she got a wristband anyways, and we went and got drinks and met up. I talked to my the one person I knew that worked at the bar and Greystone Ale House, which is right by my house. We talked briefly, and then at some point we met up with Greg, Aaron, and everybody kind of got grouped together there.
And you text Greg pretty early to figure out where he was because you guys didn't go together?
Yeah, we were meeting them there. They were there, I think, probably an hour or so be ahead of us.
And you talked to other girls when you were at the watering hole?
I did.
And who were they?
I had talked to Katie Jones when I was outside with Greg.
Anyone else?
Not like, I don't think I had any actual conversations, maybe a hi or something like that, nothing that I recall.
And just defining Nikki as a person, she was pretty bubbly and outgoing,
Yeah, she was.
but she really didn't know this group of people that well, right? The girls in your group that you went with?
Oh, I think she knew Crystal. I don't believe she hadn't met Jesse. I don't think she knew Angela, but she knew Crystal and Darcy. And so I think she was comfortable there, and she's, comfortable with this, meeting new people. It was, my friends, and introduced them and introduced her.
How often were you and her separated during the concert?
What do you mean, like, how much time, or, because there's, I don't know how many trips she
Sure,
went.
how long were you separated from her during the concert in
Like
terms of time?
total time, or
Yes, a total time.
I don't know, maybe a half hour with the various 5 to 10 minute bathroom and drink trips.
And then eventually the concert was starting to wind down, correct?
Yes.
And you had been separated from the rest of your group, right?
After that point, at some point near after the concert ending, when everybody was kind of funneling out of the volleyball concert area, I don't know exactly where I was, and I think I met up with Nikki. I think we went to the bar possibly. I don't know if we had a drink there or not, or we went right to the bathrooms. I don't really recall. So for some reason I kind of remember that towards the end of the show, I was on either going to the bathroom and grabbing a round of drinks and coming back to them, and then it was ending. I'm not too clear on what the exact, how that played out.
And then at some point, were you made aware that the group was gone and you had missed the ride with them?
Yeah, as I explained earlier, the plan wasn't to really go with them. There wasn't really a plan. We had talked earlier in the night, that we were going to go somewhere else after. We didn't say where or anything. And at that point, when Nikki called me and I spoke with her on the phone and she was in the car with my friends, I was kind of, when I got back from the bathroom, I was figuring she would still be there at the watering hole or somewhere there.
So you knew that the group was going to go somewhere after, but you didn't know where, right?
Yeah, I didn't know where.
And you didn't take part in the conversation picking where you were going to go next, right?
No.
And then you found out that the group was going to the sardine can?
Yeah.
Describe the general area of the sardine can for me on what you know of it.
It's down off of Broadway, close towards the end of the shops and retail commercial district.
Would you define that area as sketchy?
Yes, the neighborhoods, it is surrounded with some older homes and dark streets. Industrial type areas too are nearby.
And you told Aaron it was sketchy as fuck that way.
I believe I said that to Aaron. I don't know. I think that was the next day.
So you knew that was a bad area.
I mean, it wasn't like scary area. I mean, once I had found out later that when Nikki had gone off and walked off that way, when Aaron told me about that, I did state that it was sketchy as fuck that in that area. She walked off through those dark neighborhoods and did not trust that area. at that time of night, a girl walking alone by herself.
How long were you at the watering hole before you decided to leave for the sardine can?
From when I got there, or from what point are you asking?
From the point that you were separated from your group until the point that you left the watering hole, how long were you there?
I think it was probably close to an hour that it ended up being, and, you know, it was,
And who were
It was-
you with at that time?
Greg was there, I know, and I know Katie and a couple other people and some acquaintances, whatever, that I just kind of knew of who they were, just kind of generally like bullshitting, talk with them, and I know that I met, because we were on our way out the door, and then that's when we ran into Steve and Andrea and her husband, and I think maybe one or two other people in that group, and then that conversation went from a hi, hello, and to 20, 30 minutes.
So you were separated from Nikki for quite a long time.
At that point, yeah, around, I'd say close to an hour. It kind of went by really fast.
And you testified earlier that you weren't necessarily concerned because she was with your friends, right?
Yes, it did.
Was there any part of you that thought that this was your date night with Nikki, that maybe you should be with her?
Well, it wasn't, I mean, we were going out to have fun, and we were going out with friends. And friends she had met before, and it's kind of like it wasn't a date that we're going out for a sit-down dinner or anything. We're going out to a rock concert and having drinks, so.
And you chose to stay with Greg at that point in time.
Well, I didn't know that she had left until later, that she had already left, and then by the time I had another drink and finishing another drink and then talking to the next person, you know, and all of a sudden the time just kind of, you know, just goes by.
So you didn't know she left, but you also weren't trying to find her at the watering hole, correct?
Well, after I left the bathroom, I remember looking, so you had to go through, when you go from the front bar, you had to show wristbands to get back through this area to the concert area, because I think the front bar was open to the general public. So you had to have, you know, show that you had access to the back concert area. Went back there and didn't see Nikki out or anybody out there, and I saw Greg and Katie outside, I believe, and went out there and talked to them. Greg could have been with me at that point, and we went outside. I'm not too clear on that.
So you knew she wasn't there at that point, that's fair to say.
I didn't know she wasn't there at that point. When I went out there, I thought she was either talking to another group of friends. She had introduced me to at least two groups of friends. There was a Nicole Dillon, and I think one of her friends that we had met earlier before the Steel Panther had played in between Annex Plane. We had met them in the center room and had a brief, you know, introduction chat and whatever. Her and Nikki talked about some things that I didn't really know about, and then I think that was right before the band was about to play or whatever. And so, I mean, she knew people there, so I was figuring she was somewhere about. There was a lot of people there, so it wasn't like there's 10 people and you can say, oh, she's not here, and I was not even thinking about that. I figured she was somewhere around, you know, or in the bathroom.
And Greg finally talked to you about leaving the watering hole?
After I talked to Nikki, and then after, you know, talking with Greg and Katie, and had ordered some drinks I don't know at what point I had checked my phone, and all of a sudden I noticed I had a couple of texts that came like out of nowhere, and I was like shocked, you know, what's going on here, and I responded to that, and then.
So Doug actually had texted you, I'm going to pick you up in 5 minutes. outside of the watering hole, and then a few minutes later, he texted you, get outside now.
Who texted me?
Greg.
Who texted me?
Greg?
Oh, Greg. At some point, what time? I don't know what time are you referring to?
When you were leaving the watering hole?
When we actually left, or when we were kind of like on our way out the door?
Whenever Greg texted you.
I don't recall when he exactly texted me, but he did say something. He went outside. I didn't know where his car was parked, and I think I was still talking or finishing up my drink with that group of friends at that corner of the bar right by the front entrance door.
So if Greg texted you to come outside in 5 minutes, and then soon after texted you to get the fuck outside now, would you agree that that's a pretty sudden change in tone?
No, because, I don't know, we talk to each other in text that way, just kidding around. I don't know, I don't know why, I didn't take it as he was upset or anything.
So you think Greg was just joking around at that point in time?
I would say that was my take on it.
And then you eventually left at some point?
Yeah, within whatever, after 12 at some point there.
Again, you really didn't care where Nikki was?
Oh, I did care. I mean, I did care where Nikki was, and I wanted to get to the sardine can, and I did feel kind of bad that, I wanted to be at the sardine can with my friends. Because the people I was talking to, I hadn't talked to them in many years and was never very close with them. And, I should be spending time with my close friends and my girlfriend, Nicole.
At that point, you were prioritizing talking to your friends over talking with Nicole and staying with Nicole, right?
Not intentionally by any means, no.
But you were, in effect, right?
I mean, I guess it was one of those things where, people keep talking and I have a hard time saying, oh, I got to go and actually leave,
But you could have done that to go be with Nicole, you just chose not to.
In hindsight, I mean, I didn't make like a absolute decision or something like that. It was just kind of in the moment, and the conversation just went from being a hello to a 20-30 minute conversation. And somebody, I think, bought a round of drinks and a round of shots, and here, we were kind of, partying,
And in that moment, you were focused on other friends, other people, and not Nikki.
I had Nikki on my mind, definitely, but I was also talking with my friends, they weren't close friends, but.
So she was on your mind, just in the back of your mind.
Well, yeah, and I knew she was with Crystal and a lot of my good friends, close friends that I knew and trusted, and that, I'd see them a little bit later.
In a sketchy neighborhood.
At that point, I wasn't thinking at all about the sketchiness of the neighborhood or anything of that sort.
And then finally, when you did leave the watering hole, you got in Greg's car and Greg drove?
Yes.
When did you start receiving the text messages from Nikki?
What text messages are you referring to?
The messages that Nikki sent to you where she started, so what bitch you with? And then when she said, fuck you, abusive asshole. Those text messages.
Do you know what, I don't know what time those were exactly sent, 'cause she did send me.
Remember where you were?
I know I received some while I was at the watering hole, and some, I think either when I was, leaving at the watering hole or, in that process of leaving somewhere at that point. Depends on, I don't exactly recall where I was. I mean,
So when you were receiving those messages, you never thought, oh my gosh, I should go be with Nicole, I should figure out what's going on?
well, I tried to, I sent her an LOL, what's the deal basically, nothing to be upset about.
So it was funny to you that she was upset. You laugh out loud.
Well, I don't know, overly use that. I probably text that way too often, and it's just kind of a habit.
So when you're at the watering hole and you're receiving those text messages, you can tell that Nicole's angry.
I didn't know how upset she was, or she was just trying to be, sending me messages just to get me to go there right away. I didn't know where she was. Didn't know what she was thinking.
Does she typically call you an abusive asshole?
No,
Does she typically ask you what bitch you with?
no. I
But
mean,
that still didn't cause alarm to you that you need to get with Nicole?
I didn't know what she was thinking, and there was no basis to there was just a puzzling messages to me that I didn't get where she was coming from.
In fact, you told police when they tried to ask you about it, you just don't know. That's crazy Nikki. She gets those thoughts in her head sometimes.
Yeah, at times she would, get some thoughts and that were just plain untrue.
So that was Nikki's fault.
What do you mean?
It's Nikki's fault. She was misinterpreting things.
Misinterpreting, yeah, whatever. I don't know what she was thinking, that why she was sending me those messages.
But she was angry.
It's kind of seemed that way a little bit in the messages. I didn't know, in a text message, it can be read a bunch of different ways, so.
This is Exhibit 41, Mr. Detrie. Is that what it says?
Yes.
Doug, are you looking at Exhibit 41 right now?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me what that is?
It's SMS messages between myself and Nikki.
And if you look on the left where it says party, that says Nikki's name?
Like to and from.
Yeah.
Yes.
And is that how you had her name saved in your phone?
I believe so.
You hesitated a little bit?
Yeah,
because her
I-
last name is spelled wrong?
Yeah, actually, I put it in the very first night I met her when she just said her name, and I guess I just never corrected it.
And do these text messages represent the text messages that you can remember from that night?
Yeah, but I don't know, these times do not look accurate.
Right, and we can clarify that, Judge. This, when you download the phone, this is in UTC time. So essentially that's 5 hours fast. So you have to subtract 5 hours for that timestamp to be accurate, and I believe the state and the defense have a stipulation or an agreement to that fact.
Accurate, Attorney, let's say.
It is accurate. I guess my concern would be, as we're asking Doug to go through that, particularly given the nature of this, it's cross-examination, it's obviously aggressive. I'd prefer that if we're gonna reference those and talk about times, perhaps we could correct the timestamp on each of them. It wouldn't take that much to simply give him an accurate timestamp.
Why don't we do that? Because the court had the same question about the timestamp when I looked at Exhibit 40, so.
To judge, to potentially save time, these are also numbered with a number right at the front, so to save any sort of confusion and the defense doesn't want to waste any time, we have each one numbered. So if I did refer to a specific text message, I could refer right to that number, and that would help clarify that.
So if you say number 1, Mr. Detrie could follow that. Is there a message that number 1?
Yeah, it's one, yeah.
All right, why don't we do it that way? And we can later correct that for the record with the accurate time. So go ahead with that format, Attorney Schumer.
Yes, thank you. So Doug, these text messages accurately represent the text messages you remember from that night?
Yeah, it looks like it. As far as I can see, it was what I can recall and what I looked at the next day. That's what she had sent me.
Judge, I would move to admit Exhibit 41.
Any objection to 41, subject to redirect?
Subject to further clarification later about the times.
41 is received.
So Doug, when you finally left the watering hole with Greg, you were receiving these text messages from Nikki.
Yes, and I know there was, because my phone was in my pocket, it was loud in conversation, and I didn't receive them. I know I received a bunch of them right when I was like walking out the door. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, then I gave Nikki a call once I was in the car with Greg, and to see, what's going on,
And you went through some of these text messages with the state before, and there's certain themes that develop in these text messages. So one of the themes, since you just went through them, is that Nikki's essentially accusing you of cheating on her or being with a different woman, correct?
Yeah, I don't know where she was getting that from. I had just talked to her. I don't know how long before. I think it was within minutes of when she said, "So what bitch you with?" And I just talked to her on the phone and said I was at the watering hole and that she was in the parking lot, and so I don't know why she'd even think I wasn't with anybody. I don't know what she means by that.
So are you discrediting what Nikki was saying?
What do you mean discrediting her?
Well, I suppose I'll back up. So you told law enforcement again that this was just crazy Nikki, right? She just gets these thoughts in her head.
I don't really recall those exact words, but
You don't remember telling police that Nikki gets thoughts in her head. She gets crazy thoughts in her head.
the
Right.
thoughts aren't necessarily true. Yeah, I did say something on the lines of that.
So you have no idea why she would be asking you what bitch you with at that time.
I mean, looking at it now or at that moment in time?
At that moment in time.
Because I don't know what time I actually read these, because these are all sent to me in a pretty close time frame. I think I did look at the text. I mean, I wasn't looking at my phone the entire time. When I was outside, all of a sudden, so I didn't respond back. If I would have gotten these texts all at once, I would have responded back to her. And maybe she was upset that I wasn't responding to her, and she kept on sending me messages. I don't know. I don't want to speculate what was going through Nikki's mind. I just don't know.
Had you cheated on her in the past?
No, I have not.
Wait, Mr. Detrie, just a minute. Objection, Attorney Lassay.
I think that's irrelevant. It's clearly an attempt to smatter the defendant. Excuse me, Mr. Detrie.
Relevance, Attorney Schucker.
It goes to the victim's state of mind, and it helps explain why she would send these things, these text messages to Doug. And it goes to their relationship and the state it was in at that time.
Certainly, there are a number of reasons why somebody may text like that. One of them may be there may have been an incident in the past where someone was unfaithful. But Mr. Detrie's already testified he doesn't know. It would be pure speculation. And I do think that it's not necessarily probative. I think the prejudicial outweighs that. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Doug, the text messages didn't just talk about infidelity, they also talked about abuse. For instance, the one that was already read to you, fuck you, abusive asshole. That would be number 4. And then number 30, that Nikki sent to you, she said, you hurt me all the time. Did you hurt Nikki that night?
Do you mean physically or what? No, I mean.
Did you physically beat her in the past?
No, I never physically beat Nikki.
So you just have no idea why she would say these things?
Exactly, I have no idea where that was coming from. That's why it was so puzzling to me. I think I was telling Greg or whatever, I'm like, what's Nikki talking about here?
Did you finally get a hold of Nikki when you were in the car?
In Greg's car?
Were you in other cars that night?
No. Well, I was only, when I rode to the watering hole, I was in my car and then with Greg's car. So what are you referring to when Greg and I left the watering hole? I did get a hold of Nikki, and that is when I talked to her and she was not making any sense. And I was, trying to calm her down and diffuse, try to say there's nothing to be, what's wrong, nothing to be upset about. I'm on my way to see you. Sorry it took so long, and I don't think she was listening to anything I had to say. And I said, here, Greg, you try to talk to her. She's just not making any sense.
And now at that point, now you definitely know she's angry at you.
Yeah, it was kind of weird that she wasn't like yelling at me, but it just didn't make any sense. I mean, I couldn't even make out what she was really saying. That's to the point it was.
She clearly wasn't happy.
She wasn't happy, and I was, just saying, just let me know where you are. We'll come pick you up. We're drunk. Let's go home, If you want to go home, you want to go, tell me where you want to go. And I don't think she heard a word or was listening to anything I had to say.
And that's, again, because she was not happy with you at that point.
It seemed that she was definitely not happy with me, but I couldn't make out really a word that she said.
So it was an angry tone?
Somewhat. I would, somewhat angry, drunk, slurring. I mean, just wasn't making any sense.
And then her phone eventually, or did she hang up, or what happened then?
Well, Greg was on the phone and for a couple of minutes with her, and all of a sudden, the phone conversation ended. I, said, what'd she say? What happened? Said, I don't know. She either hung up on me or, and I tried calling her back and went right to voicemail, and said, well, she's either screening me or the phone died, and turned it off, so I knew she was upset at that point. Then, let's just go down, it just continued on down to the sardine can.
So moving back a little bit, when you were getting the text messages and you were driving with Greg to the sardine can, at some point she tried to call you and you didn't answer, right?
I don't, when we were driving, you're saying?
Whenever it was that you ignored her call, when was that?
I didn't ignore a call. I think I may have missed a call. The phone was in my pocket, did not hear it, for whatever reason, being loud, didn't hear the phone in my pocket. I was not intentionally ignoring it, and maybe she took it that way. Maybe that was another reason she's upset. I don't know. I don't know what was going through her mind at that point.
So again, this is Nikki's fault. It's her misinterpretation of things.
Well, her fault, or, I don't know what you were trying to say by that, but can you kind of clarify that? Or?
Sure. What I'm trying to get across is that it seems like you're testifying that Nikki had no idea what she was talking about and she had no grounds to be saying any of this stuff.
I would say that's correct.
And it's, again, just Nikki has no idea. It says you have no fault in this at this point.
And no fault to her thinking or thought process that I don't know. I don't know. She says, "Yep, I learned lots." And I said, and then she says, "What bar?" And I think then she says, "You just admit you love whores." I thought she was, just giving me a little funny jab back a little bit, like she's kind of upset, but just giving me a little shit.
So at some point after you missed Nicole's call, you then answer Angela's call.
I think I did answer a call from Angela. I don't know. I don't know if that was after. I don't think I even noticed that I missed a call from Nikki. And I think I don't know if I talked to Angela or I talked to Nikki. And I'm not very clear on that phone call.
Doug, you seem to be very unclear with a lot of these facts compared to the way you testified for the state. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I don't really recall the content of what was being said exactly on each phone call. If I'm looking at this, I don't have there's not the phone call records. I know there was I think it was a pretty short conversation with Angela. And
Angela, sorry to cut you off. You're starting to drift a little bit. You can take that exhibit and put it away from you for now.
Yeah,
you can put it right up on that ledge. So you did get a hold of Angela. Angela called you.
I believe so, yes.
And Angela told you you had to get to the sardine can.
I don't know if she said I had to, but she said we're at the sardine can, something on that line,
So you thought Angela was very calm at that time?
I didn't at that time notice any, anger or, yeah.
Did you know anything at that time?
Yeah, I knew.
Sure, I'll just get more direct. So you don't remember Angela telling you you had to get to the sardine can to get with Nikki?
I don't specifically recall those exact words.
Do you remember a general conversation like that?
I just remember talking to her, and I thought at that point she was with Nikki, and I thought I said, "Tell Nikki we're on our way. We'll be there shortly." and because there's calls and there's texts in between there, and I said, you know, LOL, come on, Nikki, you know, I'll be there shortly or soon or whatever.
When did you find out that Nikki left the sardine can?
I think that was when Greg had said that she was walking when we were on our way. We were driving probably a quarter, I mean, down Velpa, I think in that general area from leaving the watering hole. Some point in there when I reached her, and then Greg was talking to her and said she was walking. And I think Greg had said that she was the one walking and didn't specify where.
That's pretty vivid in your memory. You remember that in general?
And general, I mean.
Where was she walking from, the sardine can?
I didn't really know. I mean, I just heard from others that she was at the sardine can. I never saw Nikki at the sardine can, so I can't personally verify that she was there.
But she's now in that sketchy neighborhood walking away from the sardine can, right?
But I was not thinking at that point in time, I was not thinking of that area as being a sketchy neighborhood until well after when Aaron told me about where she walked off into. Because I didn't know about the whole story with her leaving the bar and what happened supposedly then.
So you didn't know that area was sketchy 12 hours before when you sent that message to Aaron?
Well, I mean, it wasn't on my mind. I mean, like, I wasn't thinking about it, but I knew
Shouldn't
that.
you have been concerned at that point that Nikki is walking away from the sardine can in a sketchy neighborhood?
At that point in that phone call, we didn't know where she was walking. She was just outside the bar, you know. She could have been walking anywhere from that point. She could have been walking towards all the other nice lit up Broadway businesses. I don't know where she was walking, you know.
When did you find out which way she walked?
I'm not exactly sure. I think it was at some point when I talked to Aaron, and I don't recall exactly when that was. I mean, if you had some when I talked to Aaron, I think it would maybe refresh my memory, but.
That's fine. So it wasn't until later the next day that you even really cared where Nikki walked off to.
Well, at some point she had said that she was with a friend. That good thing I found somebody I knew or whatever. So I figured she was just pissed off at me for whatever reason, and she's gonna go, you know, take some time and with whatever friend, and you know, that she was fine.
So she was pissed at you at that time.
I mean, from these texts, I was kind of thinking she was possibly. I don't know, but.
And you weren't trying to.
It's reading texts.
Just let him answer, let him finish his answer, all right, go ahead.
So she's pissed at you at that time, and you're not trying to go get with her. You're not trying to go find her right at that moment.
At what moment?
When you know that she's pissed at you.
I don't know at what point I knew she was, per se, pissed at me. I mean, these are kind of off the wall texts, and I got them all at once, and I had tried calling her, and I don't recall if I actually talked to her when I was at the watering hole still, because I think most of these texts were all when I was still at the watering hole, and I think I got a bunch of them when I actually looked at my phone after I was done with the conversation with my friends up at the bar, and noticed a whole bunch of texts again, and then I tried calling her right away.
When did you start to get angry at Nikki?
I wasn't angry at Nikki.
You were never angry at Nikki the entire time on the 21st.
On
You don't have to look at
the
the exhibit.
entire time of the 21st.
Correct.
In what time frame? Because later in that day, when I had woken up, I was getting pretty upset with her that she wasn't at home and not responding to me. I was getting upset with her later in that afternoon after I had woken up.
Do you remember what time you arrived at the sardine can?
I don't know, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. So I don't know exactly what time we left the watering hole. I mean, I'm giving an approximation. So I think it was quarter after midnight, 12:30 when we left, actually driving in the car to, 15, 20 minutes or so to getting there, so closer to 1 o'clock.
And at that point, you had not seen her in hours.
That would be close to 2 hours at that point. So I think it was about 11 o'clock is when the concert ended and I had last seen her and we were going to the bathroom.
And you knew she was mad at you. She was pissed at you. You had gotten those text messages.
You keep on saying that. Like, I don't know when you're saying I knew she was mad. There wasn't a point that I knew she was mad. I mean, there was some sense to it. I took him as that she was just kidding around. I mean, she did like to joke around too. I mean, sending sarcastic text messages, and some are like, it's hard to interpret.
Nikki has walked off in the past before with you, right? Like the Packer game when she walked off when it was really cold out. You remember that?
Yes.
Was that a scary incident?
Yeah, it was not really scary. I mean, it was kind of like, what are you doing, Nikki?
She tried to walk out without a coat in very cold weather, and she ended up in the back of a squad car, right?
Yeah, she did. And like a block and a half from the bar, she like ran out and I was closing my tab and she got upset with me for no reason and ran off, and I was a couple hundred feet behind her, and by the time I got out around the edge of this other bar that's in the parking lot, I saw her that she was stopped. An officer had stopped her, and she was not very cooperative with them, and they were asking her why and she's just like, "Oh, I'm just going to walk home."
So it's your testimony that was just another one of those times that Nikki just walked off and you had no idea why?
Yeah, I mean, I did not get why she was there. I mean, why she just all of a sudden kind of freaked out like that. I mean, we were there with her family. I believe her brother was right there with me.
But then getting back to the sardine can, you were at the sardine can and Nikki wasn't there, right?
That's correct. When I was there, she
So when
was
you were
not
there,
there.
she was not there.
What was your answer, Mr. Detrie?
When I was at the sardine can, Nikki was not there.
And you said you knew how Nikki gets, but you say you still weren't worried at that time at all.
I mean, with her, she said she was with she found somebody she knew. I don't know if at that point I even knew. I don't think I had gotten a hold of my friends at that point that they had left. I was drinking and, I was kind of like, what is she doing? Is she with friends? Where did she go?
And at that point, you didn't care about meeting up with Nikki at that moment.
No, I was hoping she would, come back to the sardine can.
Do you remember harassing the bartender?
What do you mean? No, I don't recall harassing the bartender.
Do you remember harassing other people at the bar?
I don't recall that. Maybe if I was joking around with them, I don't know what you're referring to. I don't recall that.
Do you remember talking to other women at the bar?
I don't know. know, maybe, I don't know if the bartender was even male or female. I mean,
Judge, may we approach?
We're almost done, but go ahead. Our sidebar had to do with how we were going to proceed with potentially another exhibit, another piece of evidence. It would be lengthy, potentially lengthy, and it's 5 after 5. It's time. This is a good time to break for the day. So we'll stop testimony today at this time. Have a good evening. We'll pick things up at 8:30 tomorrow morning again. Don't discuss this case with anyone or read any accounts. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30.
All rise.